Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a truly essential look at something that, well, shapes all of us, whether you're learning, teaching, or simply caring about how the next generation grows.
That's right.
We're diving deep into what it means to build coherence, focus, holism, and well-being within our educational
A
systems.
really critical topic.
Yeah, we've pulled some incredible insights from a key chapter on this, and our mission really is to unpack how schools can shift from scattered, often overwhelming initiatives.
Which happens a lot.
Exactly, to create an environment where every student's voice, holistic development, and overall well-being are truly at the core.
Yeah.
So, to set the stage, here's a powerful quote from Han Feng, an assistant superintendent in a large urban district. She says, "We are combating the narrative of the system.
Mm-hmm.
The system was created to keep our voices down, and so in all shape or form, when we're doing something that is flipping the script, we still have to speak louder in more persuasive ways. We flipped the script on an age-old institution that really thought that learning started with just adults. That whole idea of sage on the stage and students as an empty sieve."
What jumps out immediately from that quote is just how fundamentally it challenges the bedrock of traditional education.
Yeah, right.
It's not just about minor adjustments. It's a fundamental reimagining of who holds knowledge and whose voice really matters in the learning process.
Yeah, absolutely.
It raises a crucial question, really, for anyone in education. How do we genuinely create a system where every student isn't just sort of present?
But truly empowered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Empowered and central to their own journey.
That's a perfect launching point. So the core concept here, the one everything else builds on, is coherence. It sounds maybe a bit academic,
Still that, yeah.
but it's far more than just things being aligned. What does it actually mean in this educational context, and why is it so incredibly vital right now?
Well, coherence, it comes from the Latin cohere, which means to stick together.
Yeah.
But it implies a much deeper unity than just alignment. The sources define it as a shared depth of understanding about the purpose and nature of the work, in the minds and actions, individually and especially collectively.
So shared understanding.
Right. Think of it this way. Everyone in a school, from the principal, teachers, even the students themselves, they don't just know what they're doing, but they profoundly understand why they're doing it and how their piece connects to a larger shared vision. It's that why that's often missing.
And what's the alternative? I mean, our sources paint this picture of too many initiatives today just leading to fragmentation.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Fragmentation, leaving educators feeling completely overwhelmed, almost paralyzed sometimes.
Right, like they're just rearranging deck chairs on a ship that's, maybe not heading in the right direction anyway.
That's a great analogy. Coherence demands a completely new, unifying strategic plan, not just shuffling the existing pieces.
Okay.
And the real power of coherence is how it cuts through all that noise. Imagine educators, instead of being pulled in a dozen different directions by conflicting mandates,
Yeah.
suddenly sharing a single powerful purpose. That clarity isn't just efficient, it's actually a profound shift in well-being. It replaces that overwhelm with focused intention.
Okay, so it connects directly to well-being.
Absolutely. And that kind of unified purpose is foundational for any real systemic change to stick.
The sources also introduce holism and well-being as really integral parts of this coherent system. Can you break those down for us a bit?
Yeah, definitely. Holism, and this draws from what's known as indigenous epistemology, ways of knowing, that really prioritize interconnectedness.
Okay.
It emphasizes accounting for the whole of the system and the individual learner, the emotional, spiritual, physical, intellectual, and cultural dimensions.
The whole person.
Exactly. It's about truly seeing students as complete individuals, not just, brains to fill with facts or problems to solve.
Right, and well-being.
Well-being is defined here as the experience of holism as integration of mind, body, spirit, and identity. And this isn't just a nice to have a soft skill.
Oh.
No, it's critical. Without it, the source says instruction can become cognitively and emotionally overloaded, which actually stifles creativity and a student's sense of agency.
So it actually gets in the way of learning.
It absolutely can. It's about cultivating an environment where students can genuinely thrive, not just barely manage stress.
Okay, that makes sense. And that leads us perfectly into this idea of a pedagogy of voice. The sources suggest this is grounded in 6 simple rules and aims for the measurement that truly matters, student agency.
Right.
What exactly is this pedagogy? How does it challenge the status quo?
Well, a pedagogy of voice is about fundamentally shifting power dynamics in the classroom and the school.
Shifting power.
Yes. It empowers students to actively shape their learning, moving way beyond just passively receiving information. It's a direct challenge to the traditional pedagogy of compliance.
Compliance, okay.
Yeah.
Where students just follow rules.
Exactly. Where they're expected to just follow rules, absorb information.
Yeah.
Instead, this pedagogy of voice asks these really probing questions like, what really matters to us here in this community right now? What is our equity imperative, our call to action that courageously names the racism and inequity inside our own buildings? It demands that students' lived experiences and perspective actually drive the learning.
That is a truly profound shift. Wow. The sources point out that traditionally, teachers often work like isolated artisans, right? Each doing their own thing.
Yeah, in their own classrooms.
Which naturally leads to fragmented efforts system-wide. How does a pedagogy of voice address that isolation?
Well, by its nature, it creates a necessity for a shared language about teaching and learning. It makes the complex work of teaching visible across a school or district.
So everyone's talking the same language.
Ideally, yes. And it encourages building deep, trusting relationships, not just between teachers and students, which is crucial, but also with parents and the broader community.
Why the community involvement?
To genuinely address inequities in learning opportunities. You can't do that in isolation. This moves us beyond those individual pockets of excellence you sometimes see.
Right, the one great teacher.
Exactly. Towards a sustainable, system-wide strategy for change, where everyone is kind of working from the same playbook, centered on student voice.
So if we accept this vision, this student-centered learning, how do schools actually do it? I mean, what are the practical tools? One powerful one our sources highlight is the graduate profile.
Ah, yes. The graduate profile.
What exactly is it, and how does it help bring all these ideas, coherence, voice together?
The graduate profile is essentially a collective vision. It defines what students should understand about the world and themselves to lead, as the source says, a full and meaningful life.
So beyond just academics.
Way beyond academics. It's a shared blueprint, ideally co-created and agreed upon by the whole community, educators, students, parents, defining what a truly successful student looks like beyond just test scores. It becomes the North Star for the entire system.
Okay, a North Star, I like that. The San Francisco Unified School District, SFUSD's middle school network, gives a great example.
They do.
Their profile defines core elements like sense of purpose and sense of self, which includes things like self-awareness, growth mindset, designing their future.
Really deep stuff.
Yeah. And then surrounding components like career skills, global identity, content knowledge, creativity, collaboration. It's incredibly holistic.
And what's fascinating and really key here is that developing a graduate profile isn't just about creating some static document that sits on a shelf.
Right.
It's meant to be an iterative, ongoing process. It involves extensive community input surveys, focus groups, and crucially, student panels.
Getting students involved in defining success.
Absolutely. It becomes a living tool.
Yeah.
It really drives coherence and enables that pedagogy of voice because it provides a deeply local, relevant framework for what deep learning should look like there.
And the sources from Envision Learning Partners give some clear, actionable tips for building one effectively.
Yeah, those are helpful.
Things like keeping it simple, 6 or fewer categories, 1 page, ideally. Making it visual, inclusive, student-centered.
Authentic to skills relevant outside school.
Exactly. Authentic, actionable, and crucially, equitable. It's a really comprehensive guide to building this shared vision.
It really is.
So once you have this clear graduate profile, this blueprint, how do you actually measure student progress in a way that aligns with this holistic vision, not just traditional tests?
Right. That's where performance-based assessment comes in.
Okay, performance-based assessment. How is that fundamentally different from, say, a multiple-choice test?
Well, performance-based assessments are seen as a dynamic vehicle for what the sources call street data cycles.
Street data. What's that?
Think of it like real-time feedback from the ground, from the classroom floor. It's immediate, often qualitative insights that let teachers make adjustments right away, unlike waiting for standardized test results.
Okay, more immediate.
Exactly. This approach moves away from what they call a pedagogy of defense, just focusing on prepping for low-stakes tests, and instead uses that pedagogy of voice.
How so?
Students actively demonstrate evidence of the holistic competencies and their growing sense of agency, identity, belonging, mastery, and efficacy. They're not just recalling facts. They're showing what they can do with their knowledge, applying it.
That sounds like it truly brings learning to life. Can you give us a concrete example?
Absolutely. The June Jordan School for Equity, JJSE, uses these assessments really powerfully. They have something called the Propel rubric.
Propel, what does that track?
It's a rubric, basically a scoring guide, that tracks 6 key habits of mind: perspective, relevancy, originality, precision, evidence, and logical reasoning.
Okay, so deeper thinking skills.
Exactly. And students literally defend their learning. They present their work and argue for its quality based on these criteria. The source describes these defenses as often being profoundly emotional experiences and even dizzying moments of wonder for students.
Dizzying moments of wonder, wow.
Yeah, as they connect their learning to real-world applications to their own lives.
This is where it gets really compelling, I think. The story of Yvonne, a Latina student at JJSE.
Yes, Yvonne's story is incredibly powerful. It's a real testament to student agency in action.
What happened?
She defended her senior portfolio, and she described it using this amazing metaphor facing the metaphor of an Aztec warrior's slingshot.
Wow.
As she confronted stereotypes about her identity and background and really charted her own journey through her work, this process wasn't just academic for her.
No, it sounds deeply personal.
Exactly. She said it allowed her to feel strong enough to vanquish those stereotypes. And she explicitly credited this performance assessment process as preparation for college and, quote, for who I have become.
That's incredible, and that really highlights the contrast with a pedagogy of compliance, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Because students choose how to represent themselves, how to tell their story through their work. It empowers their voice in a way a standardized test just never could.
And Envision Learning Partners, again, provide some important criteria for making these assessments effective, right?
Yes. They emphasize that these assessments must elicit evidence of skills and knowledge that genuinely matter, aligning with that graduate profile. They need to be tight on quality criteria.
So rigorous.
Rigorous, yes. Authentic, as we said before. And crucially, they should offer a learning experience in and of themselves through reflection and feedback. The assessment is part of the learning.
Okay, so the assessment itself teaches. Got it. Now, if student voice is key in the classroom and we use these performance assessments, what happens when we zoom out again? How does this ripple into the community? Especially when tackling something as critical and sometimes difficult as social justice.
Yeah, that's a crucial connection. The June Jordan School for Equity, JJC again, offers a powerful model for this with their Art of Social Justice teaching framework.
Okay, a framework. Developed by their former principal, Matt Alexander.
That's right. And this framework really acts as a guiding philosophy, a sort of constitution for how teaching and learning should operate at every level in the school, always with an eye towards justice.
So what's in this framework? The source shows it like a puzzle,
Yeah, it's a great visual.
with the art of social justice teaching at the center. And the surrounding pieces are things like warm demander. What's that?
Warm demander means developing students as human beings first, holding high expectations, but doing so from a place of genuine care and relationship,
Okay. Then there's safe classroom community.
which is about protecting students emotionally and physically in what can be a dangerous world for many of them.
Students as intellectuals.
Developing students as warrior scholars, capable of critical thought and action,
Teacher as coach.
meaning letting students do the intellectual heavy lifting, guiding rather than just lecturing,
Knowledge of students.
which means starting where students are, understanding their backgrounds, their strengths, their challenges.
And finally, social justice curriculum.
Right. Teaching curriculum in a way that helps students understand and critique the real world, including its injustices.
That's quite comprehensive.
It really is. And what's fascinating is how these components are designed to work together synergistically, not in isolation. They aim to cultivate both knowledge and these authentic learning practices.
Wow.
It deeply challenges old assumptions, like knowledge is being poured into students.
And the source even brings in some foundational concepts from Paulo Freire, the educational philosopher. It mentions false generosity, sub-oppressors, and dual consciousness fear of freedom. Can you touch on those briefly?
Sure. These are really important lenses for understanding power dynamics in education and society. False generosity is about aid or actions that seem helpful, but actually maintain the status quo, keeping power imbalances intact.
Okay.
Sub-oppressors refers to individuals from oppressed groups who might internalize the oppressor's mindset and replicate similar behaviors within their own group.
Right, and dual consciousness.
That describes the internal conflict often felt by those who are oppressed, caught between the harsh reality of their situation and the yearning for freedom, sometimes even fearing it.
Heavy concepts, but crucial.
Very. And they provide a deeper context for defining social justice itself, which the source defines as opposition to oppression, both systemic and internalized. It's fighting injustice, both out in the world and within ourselves.
So implementing this kind of deep systemic change,
Hmm.
that takes real leadership. What did Matt Alexander, the principal, say were the key moves?
He highlighted three really crucial leadership actions. First, establishing a clear, compelling, student-centered, justice-oriented instructional vision. Everyone needs to know the goal.
Okay, the vision.
Second, crucially, supporting the process of the work. Not just dictating what good teaching looks like from on high, but supporting teachers as they figure it out, experiment, maybe even fail sometimes.
Trusting the process.
Exactly. And third, fostering authentic relational accountability. Building trust so people can rely on each other, share successes, and give real, constructive feedback. It's about empowering people to do the work together.
So let's pull back one last time. Big picture of educational reform. What does all this mean? Our sources suggest that sticking with that pedagogy of compliance, with endless, disconnected standards, it's just dizzying.
It is, and hard enough for adults to keep all of these things in our brains, let alone students.
Right.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, the choice becomes pretty stark, doesn't it? It's either continuing with scattered initiatives, fragmentation, and distress,
Which sounds exhausting.
or choosing a clear path toward coherence by embracing focus, holism, and well-being.
And that path involves?
It involves consciously designing what the source calls a pedagogy of voice anti-racist classrooms, where children feel increasingly liberated to think, feel, and dream. Liberated, that's the goal.
Liberated to think, feel, and dream. That's powerful. But this isn't easy. It's not a quick fix.
Not at all. It's a profound journey. The sources really emphasize that building this kind of coherence is iterative. It takes time.
And collaboration.
Deep collaboration, yes. And courage. From everyone involved, educators, parents, caregivers, students themselves. It asks us all, as the source says, to be willing to learn, fail, motivate each other, and stay the course.
Stay the course. Okay. So we've taken a really deep dive today into building coherence in education. We've explored how a shared vision, a pedagogy of voice that genuinely empowers students,
Tools like graduate profiles, performance-based assessments,
and frameworks for social justice teaching, how all these things can truly transform learning. It really is about moving from those disconnected, fragmented efforts to a truly unified and empowering system for our students.
You know, knowledge is always most valuable when it's understood and actually applied. And what we've explored today about building coherence, student agency, holistic well-being, these offer powerful insights, I think, not just for schools, but really for any organization, any group trying to foster deeper engagement, a shared sense of purpose, and genuine growth among its members.
That's a great point. Which leads to an important question for you, our listener. Considering everything we've discussed about coherence, about the bravery it takes to build a true pedagogy of voice, what steps can you take, maybe starting small, to build coherence in your own sphere of influence, whether that's at work, at home, in your community? And what courage will it take to sustain that effort?
Yeah, what does that look like for you?
Definitely something to mull over as you go about your day.